The first time Matteo De Luca held Sophie Lane's son, the entire ballroom went silent. Not the polite kind of silence that came when rich people pretended to be offended by bad manners. Not the strained silence of old money hiding scandal behind crystal champagne flutes. This was different. This was the kind of silence that happened when a dangerous man changed the temperature of a room without raising his voice. Sophie stood beneath the golden chandeliers of St. Aurelia Academy's winter fundraiser, with one hand gripping the edge of a linen-covered auction table, trying not to shake. Around her, women in silk gowns and men in tailored tuxedos stared as if she had dropped something vulgar at their feet instead of simply existing. Her 6-year-old son, Noah, stood beside her in his little navy blazer, his cheeks flushed red, his lower lip trembling. He clutched a paper airplane he had folded from the fundraiser program, the corners crushed beneath his nervous fingers. Across from them, Derek Volley smiled. That smile had once fooled Sophie. Years ago, before she understood that cruelty could wear cufflinks and say your name gently before breaking you. Derek lifted his champagne glass and let his voice carry just far enough. "Come on, Sophie," he said, laughter curling around every word. Don't too look so wounded. You walked into a room like this with a child on your hip and thought, what? That some powerful man would choose you. A few guests looked away. Most did not. Derek turned slightly, inviting the room into the humiliation. His new fiancée, Vanessa, stood beside him in a silver gown that sparkled like frost. She covered her mouth, pretending to be embarrassed, but her eyes gleamed. "No one wants a single mom," Derek said, louder now, especially not one who comes with baggage. Noah made a small sound. Sophie's heart cracked before her pride did. She stepped in front of her son, but she was too late. He had heard. Children always heard the words adults hoped they could bury under music and polished floors. "Mommy," Noah whispered. The ballroom lights seemed too bright. The orchestra near the stage kept playing, soft and elegant, as if the world had not just narrowed into one cruel sentence. Sophie lifted her chin. She had survived overdue bills, judgmental parents at pickup, lonely nights at the kitchen table, and mornings when she smiled for Noah after crying in the shower. She had survived Derek before. But tonight, in front of the school that had promised her son a better future, in front of donors and board members and mothers who already looked at her discount dress like it had offended them personally, something inside her faltered. Derek saw it. He always knew where to press. "Maybe you should be grateful we let you teach here," he added. "Not everyone gets charity." Sophie's eyes burned. Then a chair scraped against the marble floor. It was not loud. It did not need to be. The man who stood near the back of the ballroom had not spoken all evening. Sophie had noticed him only because everyone else had noticed him first. He wore black in a room full of winter white and champagne gold. Black suit, black shirt, no tie. Dark hair brushed back with careless precision. A scar ran faintly through his left eyebrow. Not enough to ruin his beauty. Only enough to make it dangerous. Men moved away when he walked past. Women stopped speaking. Even Derek's smile weakened. Matteo De Luca crossed the ballroom with the calm of a man who knew violence would wait for his permission. Sophie had heard his name in whispers from other teachers earlier that night. De Luca. The donor. Nobody could confirm. The man with businesses no newspaper fully understood. The man whose black SUVs had lined the private driveway like a warning. Sophie's first instinct was to move Noah behind her, Matteo noticed. His gaze dropped to her hand on her son's shoulder, then rose to her face. For one suspended moment, he looked at her as if the rest of the room had become irrelevant. Then he turned to Noah. He lowered himself to one knee. The sight of him kneeling made the entire room hold its breath. Matteo De Luca. Feared by men twice, Derek's power. Crouched on the marble floor in front of a crying little boy. "What's your name?" Matteo asked. His voice was quiet, deep, controlled. Noah sniffed. Sophie wanted to tell him he did not have to answer. But Matteo's eyes were not cruel. They were intense. Yes, dark enough to frighten anyone paying attention. But not cruel. "Noah," her son whispered. Matteo nodded, as if Noah had just introduced himself in a boardroom. "Noah," he repeated. "That's a strong name." Noah stared at him. Derek let out a nervous laugh. "Mr. DeLuca, I apologize. This is a little family drama. Sophie tends to make scenes." Matteo did not look at him. "Did he scare you?" Matteo asked Noah. Noah glanced at Derek, then at his mother. Sophie felt every eye in the ballroom. Noah nodded once. Something changed in Matteo's face. Not much. Just a slight stillness around the mouth. A shadow passing through his eyes. Matteo extended his hand. Palm up. Noah looked at Sophie for permission. She should have said no. Every sensible part of her knew that. She knew nothing about this man except that powerful people feared him. She knew men like Matteo DeLuca did not walk into rooms by accident and did not kneel unless they were making a point. But Noah had stopped crying, and Matteo's hands stayed open. Patient. Steady. Sophie gave the smallest nod. Noah placed his little hand in Matteo's chest. Matteo rose with him carefully, lifting the boy into one arm as if he weighed nothing. As if he were something precious and breakable in a world built to crush precious things. Noah clung to his shoulder. The sight hit Sophie so hard she nearly stepped back. Matteo DeLuca held her son in front of the entire ballroom. One hand supporting him gently, the other reaching toward Sophie. Not demanding. Offering. Derek's face darkened. Vanessa's smile disappeared. Sophie stared at Matteo's hand. "What are you doing?" she whispered. Matteo's eyes did not leave hers. "Choosing," he said. The word moved through the room like a blade being drawn. Sophie's breath caught. Derek stepped forward. "You have no idea what kind of woman she is." Matteo finally looked at him. The temperature had dropped again. "I know exactly what kind of man you are," Matteo said. Derek went pale. Matteo's hand remained extended. Sophie should have refused. She should have gathered Noah, walked out alone, and kept proving to the world that she needed no one. But her son's cheek rested against Matteo's shoulder. The same child who woke from nightmares asking if rich people could take him away from her. The same boy who still drew 3 stick figures sometimes. Then crossed one out before Sophie could see. And here was the most dangerous man in the room holding him like he mattered. Sophie placed her hand in Matteo's senna. His fingers closed around hers. Warm, firm, possessive, but not rough. He turned to the ballroom. "This fundraiser is over," he said. The headmaster opened his mouth, then closed it. Derek laughed, but the sound cracked. "You can end a school event." Matteo looked at the champagne glass in Derek's hand. One of Matteo's men appeared from nowhere and took the glass away. "I just did." No one moved as Matteo led Sophie toward the exit with Noah in his arm, and Sophie's hand held in his. Behind them, the orchestra stopped playing. Outside, cold Boston air swept across the private school courtyard. Snow lined the stone steps in untouched white ridges. Black SUVs waited beneath old iron lamps, their engines running, windows tinted like closed eyes. Sophie pulled her hand free the second they were outside. Matteo let her. That surprised her. Noah lifted his head, calmer now but tired. "Mommy," he murmured, reaching for her. Sophie took him immediately. Pressing his small body against her chest, she kissed his hair, breathing him in. "You okay?" she whispered. "I've got you." Matteo watched them with an unreadable expression. The snow fell lightly around him, dusting the shoulders of his black suit. He looked carved out of winter and danger. Sophie turned on him. "Thank you," she said, "but I don't know you, and I don't know what that was in there." A correction. A correction, her voice sharpened. "You walked into a room, picked up my son, and made us the center of a scandal. You were already the center of one. That doesn't mean I needed saving." His eyes moved over her face slowly, not with disrespect, but with a focus that made her skin warm despite the cold. "No," he said, "it means your son needed the room to understand he was not shameful." The words struck deeper than she wanted them to. Sophie looked away first. Noah's fingers curled into her coat. A bodyguard opened the rear door of the nearest SUV. Sophie stepped back. "We're not getting into your car." A faint, almost smile touched Matteo's mouth. "Good." She frowned. "I prefer people who understand danger before they accept comfort." That was not a romantic thing to say. It was not charming. It was the first honest thing anyone had said to her all night. Sophie hated that she respected it. "I'll call a rideshare," she said. "No. You want a D." Her eyes flashed. Matteo held up a hand. "Calm as ever. Not because I'm ordering you. Oh, because Derek Vale has 3 photographers waiting outside the east gate and 1 man near your car who does not belong to the school." Sophie froze. Matteo looked past her toward the dark line of trees near the parking lot. One of his men touched his earpiece. Sophie tightened her hold on Noah. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that your ex planned more than humiliation tonight." Her stomach turned. Across the courtyard, headlights appeared near the east gate. A camera flash sparked in the dark. Then another. Noah flinched. Matteo stepped closer, shielding them from the view without touching her. "Let me take you home," he said. "You may refuse every other thing I offer, but not safety." Sophie wanted to tell him she had been safe before he arrived, but the lie died on her tongue. Because across the courtyard, Derek stood inside the glass doors of the ballroom, watching them, and he was smiling again. Sophie's apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old brick building in South Boston, above a closed laundromat and a bakery that opened before sunrise. The stairs smelled faintly of soap, sugar, and winter damp. Matteo did not enter until Sophie allowed it. That also surprised her. His men checked the hallway, the back stairs, the alley, the roof. Sophie stood by her own front door holding Noah, feeling like her ordinary life had been invaded by shadows in expensive coats. Inside, the apartment was small but warm. Noah's drawings covered the fridge. A second-hand couch sat beneath a window with a view of the street. A tiny Christmas tree blinked unevenly in the corner because one string of lights had gone bad and Sophie had not had time to fix it. Matteo paused at the threshold. For a second, the dangerous man seemed out of place among the mismatched mugs and child-sized sneakers. Then his gaze landed on a framed drawing taped beside the kitchen. 3 people. A woman with yellow hair, a little boy, a tall man colored entirely in black. Sophie's face heated. "Noah draws everyone in black when he runs out of crayons," she said too quickly. Matteo looked at her. He did not comment. Noah had fallen asleep in the car, exhausted from tears and fear. Sophie carried him to his room and tucked him beneath a dinosaur blanket. When she returned, Matteo was standing near the window, looking down at the street. His reflection in the glass showed a man used to watching threats approach before anyone else heard footsteps. "I need you to tell me what's happening," Sophie said. Matteo turned. "Derek Vale is laundering money through St. Aurelius Donor Foundation." Sophie stared at him. "What scholarship accounts, construction grants, charity auctions, clean names attached to dirty transfers?" Her hand moved to the back of a chair. That has nothing to do with me. It does now. Why? Because your name is on 3 scholarship withdrawals. The room seemed to tilt. No, she said. That's impossible. I know. She blinked. You know, if you had stolen money, Sophie Lane, you would not be wearing shoes repaired with glue. Embarrassment flickered through her before anger saved her. You looked at my shoes. I look at details. Then look at this detail. She stepped closer. I don't steal. I don't too, Lee. And I don't let men use my son to make statements in ballrooms. His expression remained controlled. But something in his eyes sharpened at her tone. Most people probably did not speak to Matteo DeLuca that way. Sophie did not care. I teach art part-time at that school because Noah got a scholarship. She said, I work weekend events because it lowers his tuition. Derek got on the board last year and made my life hell because I refused to come back to him. That's all I know. Matteo studied her for a long moment. You were with him, Sophie laughed once. Without humor. That's what you took from all of that, his jaw tightened. I'm asking because men like Derek don't humiliate women they've forgotten. No, they did not. Sophie crossed her arms. We dated before Noah was born. Derek liked the idea of rescuing me when I was young and broke. Then he hated that I didn't stay grateful. Is Noah his? The question was quiet, dangerous. Sophie's body went cold. No. Matteo's eyes held hers. Noah is mine. She said, that is the only answer that matters. For the first time, Matteo looked away. Not in defeat, in respect. You rewrite. The softness of that admission unsettled her more than his power had. A phone vibrated in his pocket. He checked the screen. His face changed almost imperceptibly. What Sophie asked? One of Derek's photographers got close enough to your mailbox. So by morning, every gossip account in Boston will know where you live. Sophie closed her eyes. Her apartment, Noah's school, her job, her fragile, carefully held life. All because Derek had laughed and Matteo had answered. You need to leave. She whispered. Matteo's gaze returned to her. If I leave? Derek wins the first hour. I don't care about Derek. Yes, you do. His voice lowered. Because he has learned that your reputation is a cage. Tonight, I broke the lock. He will try to put it back. Sophie opened her eyes. What do you want from me? There it was. The question she should have asked at the beginning. Matteo DeLuca did not move through the world out of kindness alone. Men like him did not appear at fundraisers, lift crying children, and escort women through snow, unless something underneath the gesture served a deeper design. His silence confirmed it. I need access to the internal scholarship files, he said. Sophia's throat tightened. You did use me. No, but you need something. Yes, at least you were honest. Not always. The words hung between them. Sophie's pulse quickened. That's supposed to comfort me. No. It's supposed to warn you. A sane woman would have been terrified. Sophie was terrified. But beneath the fear was something worse. Fascination. Matteo stood in her tiny living room like a storm contained in human form. He had power. Money. Violence at his fingertips. Yet when Noah cried, he had knelt. Sophie did not know what to do with that contradiction. I won't help you if it puts my son at risk, she said. Everything puts him at risk now. Her breath caught. Matteo stepped closer, stopping just before the space became too intimate. I can protect you, he said, but I need the truth. All of it. Sophie looked up at him. You don't get to walk into my life and demand all of me. His gaze dropped briefly to her mouth, then lifted back to her eyes. No, he said, but I will find out why Derek put your name on stolen money. And until I do, you and Noah do not move without protection. You're not my husband. No. You're not Noah's father. His jaw tightened slightly. No. You not my owner. Something dark moved through his expression. Never say that to me like I would want you owned. Sophie went still. For the first time, the mask slipped enough for her to see anger beneath it. Not at her. At the idea. Matteo looked toward Noah's room. Then back at Sophie. I am not here to possess your fear, he said. I am here to make sure no man uses it against you again. Sophie's heart beat hard. A siren wailed somewhere far away. Matteo's phone vibrated again. He read the message. Then he looked at her Christmas tree. Her son's shoes by the door. The half-finished stack of graded art projects on her table. You have 20 minutes to pack. Sophie stared at him. No. Sophie, no. Her voice shook. But she held it. This is our home. And that is why Derek will come here first. The apartment lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then went out. Noah cried from his bedroom. Sophie turned. Before she could move, Matteo was already past her. Not running. Controlled. Fast. He reached Noah's door first, but stopped beside it, allowing Sophie to enter before him. That one moment nearly undid her. Noah sat up in bed, crying in the dark. Mommy, I'm here. Sophie gathered him into her arms. From the living room came the faint sound of glass cracking. Matteo drew a gun from beneath his jacket. Sophie's breath disappeared. He saw her face. Stay behind me. The window shattered. Cold air exploded into the apartment. A small black object rolled across the floor. Blinking red, Matteo cursed in Italian, grabbed Sophie by the waist, and pulled her and Noah behind the wall just as smoke burst through the room. Noah screamed. Sophie covered his ears. Men shouted in the hallway. Matteo's bodyguards forced the door open. The apartment filled with movement. Smoke. Commands. Matteo stayed in front of Sophie the entire time. Not once did his hand tremble. When they reached the back stairs, Sophie looked over her shoulder and saw her living room through the smoke, the little Christmas tree blinking again. Its damaged lights glowing through gray haze like dying stars. Her ordinary life disappeared behind her. Matteo's hand touched the small of her back. Move, he said. This time, she did not argue. The safe house did not look like a safe house. It looked like something from the cover of a luxury architecture magazine. Perched on a cliff outside Gloucester, where the Atlantic crashed black and silver against the rocks below. Glass walls reflected the stormy night. Security gates opened without a sound. Cameras turned from hidden corners like watchful insects. Noah slept through most of the drive. Curled against Sophie, with his fist wrapped in her sweater, Matteo sat across from them in the SUV. Silent. One hand resting near his knee. His knuckles were bruised. Sophie did not know when that had happened. She did not ask. At the house, a woman named Rosa met them at the door with warm blankets. And eyes that missed nothing. She looked to be in her 60s. Elegant and severe. With silver hair pinned at the back of her head. Mr. DeLuca, she said. Rosa. This is Sophie and Noah. Rosa's gaze softened when she saw the sleeping child. I prepared the East Room. Sophie tightened her grip on Noah. We're not staying long. Rosa looked at Matteo. Matteo looked at Sophie. No one contradicted her. That made the entire situation more frightening. After Sophie tucked Noah into a large bed with ocean blue sheets, she found Matteo standing on the balcony outside the hall. Wind pushed at his shirt. The sea below sounded violent enough to swallow secrets. He had removed his suit jacket. His sleeves were rolled to the forearms, a tattoo curled beneath his left cuff, dark ink disappearing under fabric. Sophie should have gone to sleep. Instead, she stepped outside. The cold struck her first. Then his gaze. "You should rest," he said. "You keep telling me what I should do. You keep ignoring me. That must be new for you." A faint smile appeared and vanished. Rare. She crossed her arms against the wind. "Who threw that thing through my window? Not Derek personally. But Derek sent them. Derek hired cowards. Cowards sell loyalty quickly. We'll know by morning." Sophie looked out at the ocean. "You say things like that so calmly. I learned young that panic doesn't stop bullets." She glanced at him. There it was again. A small opening. A glimpse of something beneath the controlled surface. "You have family?" she asked before she could stop herself. His expression closed. "Not anymore." The answer was a wall. Sophie nodded, embarrassed by her own curiosity. "I'm sorry." He looked at her then. "For what?" asking. "You didn't ask cruelly." The wind moved between them. Somewhere inside, the house hummed with quiet security systems and distant footsteps. Sophie's fingers were freezing. She hid them under her arms. Matteo noticed. He removed his jacket from the chair behind him and placed it around her shoulders. She stiffened. He stepped back immediately. "Better?" he asked. The jacket was warm from him. It smelled like cedar, smoke, and something darker she did not want to name. Sophie pulled it tighter despite herself. "Thank you." His eyes lingered on the gesture. Not possessive this time. Hungry. Then he looked away. That restraint scared her more than if he had touched her. "Why were you really at the fundraiser?" she asked. Matteo leaned against the balcony rail. "My sister died because of a man who used charity to hide blood money." Sophie went still. "She taught music at a school like St. Aurelia." He continued. "She believed wealthy people could be persuaded to do decent things if you put children in front of them." His voice did not break, but Sophie felt the grief in it like a bruise. "What happened?" "A donor fund was used to move money for the Rossini family. My sister found irregularities." She asked questions. His jaw tightened. 3 days later, her car went through a guardrail. Sophie's hand rose to her mouth. "They called it an accident," Matteo said. I disagreed. The ocean roared below. Sophie understood then. Not fully. Maybe no one could fully understand a man like Matteo De Luca unless they had walked through the fire that made him, but she understood enough. "Derek is connected to them," she said. "Yes. And my name placed there to make you disposable." The words turned her blood cold. He wanted to blame me. "When the fund collapsed," Matteo said. "Yes." Sophie pressed a hand to the balcony door. Steadying herself, Derek had called her baggage. Charity. A woman no one would choose, all while preparing to destroy her. "I need to go to the police." Matteo's eyes sharpened. "The police have 2 detectives on Derek's payroll, then the FBI. 1 agent is already dead." Sophie stared at him. "This is insane." "Yes. I am a teacher. I know. I pack peanut butter sandwiches. I make paper snowflakes. I argue with my son about brushing his teeth. I know." "No. You don't, T," she snapped. "You live in a world where men throw smoke bombs through windows and talk about dead agents like weather. I live in a world where my son cries if his dinosaur nightlight stops working." Matteo stepped closer. "Your world was invaded before I entered it, and now I'm trapped in yours." His face changed. Just slightly, but she saw it. The words had hit him. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he reached into his pocket and took out a small black phone. "Use this to call whoever you trust. Rosa can drive you anywhere in the morning if you still want to leave." Sophie blinked. You did let me go. No. Her heart jumped. I would follow at a distance, he said. I would protect you against your will if I had to. But I won't lock the door. The honesty was brutal. It should have repulsed her. Instead, it made her feel something far more dangerous than fear. Safe. Not free. Not yet. But safe. You are impossible, she whispered. Yes. He was close enough now that she could see the faint shadow of exhaustion beneath his eyes. You need sleep too, she said. I don't sleep much. That's not impressive. That's unhealthy. He stared at her. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed under his breath. It was not a warm laugh. It was rusty, almost unfamiliar, as if his body had forgotten how to make that sound. Sophie felt it in her chest. The balcony door opened behind them. Rosa appeared. Mr. De Luca, she said quietly. You need to see this. Matteo's expression hardened instantly. The moment vanished. Inside, Rosa led them to a security room hidden behind a wall of bookshelves. Screens displayed camera feeds from the property. Sophie's apartment. Stained. Aurelia. And several streets she did not recognize. One screen showed Derek Vale leaving the fundraiser. Another showed Vanessa getting into a white car. A third showed Sophie's apartment building, surrounded by police lights. Rosa touched a keyboard. An audio file played. Derek's voice filled the room. Make sure the mother looks unstable. I want custody pressure by noon. If De Luca keeps playing hero, remind him the boy opens the account. Sophie's blood turned to ice. The boy, she whispered. Matteo's face went completely still. Rosa looked at him. You were right, she said. Noah is the key. Sophie stepped back. What does that mean? Matteo did not answer fast enough. Sophie turned on him. What does that mean? His eyes met hers. The scholarship account Derek used was opened under Noah's student ID, but it's tied to a trust transfer from an older fund. What fund? Matteo's silence was the answer before he spoke. My sister's foundation. Sophie felt as if the floor had dropped beneath her. No. Sophie, no. Her voice cracked. My son has nothing to do with your sister or your revenge. I know. Do you? She backed away from him. Because every time you explain something, my son becomes more involved. Matteo moved toward her. She lifted a hand. Dawn too. He stopped. The obedience cut through her panic in a way she did not want to feel. Rosa's voice was gentle but firm. Mrs. Lane. There is more. Sophie, she said automatically. Rosa nodded. Sophie. Derek submitted paperwork 6 months ago claiming emergency guardian access to Noah's school records. Sophie stared. He forged your signature, Matteo said. Sophie's hands shook. The room blurred. 6 months ago, Noah had been sick with the flu. Sophie had missed 2 days of school. Derek had shown up at her apartment with soup she had not wanted and apologies she had not believed. He had watched Noah sleep on the couch for less than a minute before Sophie made him leave. He had smiled at the door and said, You'll need me eventually. Sophie gripped the back of a chair. I let him in, she whispered. He must have taken papers from my desk. Matteo's voice lowered. That is not your fault. You don't get to say that. His eyes darkened. No, he said, but I will say it anyway. Sophie hated him for sounding steady when she felt like she was falling apart. A camera alert flashed red on one monitor. Rosa turned. Matteo's men shifted immediately. On the screen, a black car had stopped outside St. Mary. Aurelia Academy. A man stepped out and handed something to the night security guard. The guard looked around, then unlocked the side entrance. Matteo's expression became lethal. What is it? Sophie asked. He looked at the screen, then at here. Derek is removing files tonight. Sophie straightened. I'm going with you. No. The answer came too fast. Her fear sharpened into fury. My name, my son, my school, my life? You don't get to shut me out. It's dangerous. Everything is dangerous. Remember, his jaw flexed. Noah needs you here. Noah needs this finished. Matteo looked at her for a long time. The room waited. Finally, he said, You stay in the car. Sophie almost laughed. You really don't know teachers. Stinked. Aurelia Academy looked different after midnight. Without children's voices and polished donor smiles, the old stone building seemed haunted by privilege. Snow blew across the courtyard in thin white veils. The stained glass chapel windows were dark. Security lights burned gold over the locked gates. Matteo's SUV stopped 2 blocks away. Sophie sat beside him in the back seat, wearing his black jacket over her fundraiser dress and boots Rosa had found for her. Her hair had fallen loose from its pins. She looked nothing like the woman who had stood humiliated beneath chandeliers hours ago. Matteo noticed. She felt his gaze like heat. What she asked. You're not afraid enough. I'm terrified. You hide it well. So do you. His eyes flickered. I'm always afraid. Sophie looked at him. He did not elaborate, but that single admission settled between them. Intimate and unexpected. Matteo opened the car door. Cold air rushed in. His men moved first. Silent shadows crossing the snow. Sophie followed before Matteo could stop her. He caught her wrist. Not hard. Just enough. Sophie. She looked down at his hand. Then at him. He released her. Stay behind me. He said. That I can do. They entered through the art wing because Sophie knew the maintenance keypad. Derek did not know she knew. Inside, the halls smelled like waxed floors and children's paint. Student artwork lined the walls, paper angels, winter landscapes, crooked glitter stars. The contrast between innocence and the armed men moving beneath it made Sophie's stomach twist. Matteo walked beside her, gun held low. At the records office, light spilled beneath the door. Voices murmured inside. Derek's voice. Sophie froze. Matteo looked at her. She nodded once. One of Matteo's men opened the door. Derek stood at the filing cabinet with a flash drive in his hand. Beside him was the headmaster, Dr. Ellison, pale and sweating, and Vanessa. Sophie had expected Derek. She had not expected Vanessa in black leather gloves, feeding documents into a shredder with calm precision. Vanessa looked up, then smiled. Well, she said. The charity case brought her new criminal. Matteo lifted his gun. No one moved. Derek raised both hands, but his smile returned. Careful. DeLuca. Private school. Cameras everywhere. Matteo's voice was soft. I own the cameras. Derek's smile faded. Sophie stepped forward. You forged my signature. Derek sighed as if she had disappointed him. You always make things so emotional. You used my son. I gave your son access to a world you could never afford. Sophie's hands curled into fists. You humiliated him. No. Sophie, I reminded you of reality. Derek's eyes glittered. A woman like you doesn't get to climb without someone pulling her up. I offered. You refused. So I found another use for you. Matteo moved so fast Sophie barely saw it. 1 second, Derek was smiling. The next, he was slammed back against the filing cabinet. Matteo's hand wrapped around his throat. The flash drive clattered to the floor. Vanessa gasped. Matteo's voice was low enough to chill the room. You spoke to her son. Derek clawed at his hand. Sophie's breath caught. There was violence in Matteo now. Not the polished threat of a powerful man. Something older, colder, a darkness that had been waiting behind his restraint. She should have been horrified. Part of her was. Another part remembered Noah's tears. Matteo, she said. His grip did not loosen. She stepped closer. Heart pounding. Matteo. His eyes shifted to her. For one terrifying second. She saw what men like Derek saw before they begged. Then Matteo looked at her hand hovering near his arm. She had almost touched him. Almost. He released Derek. Derek collapsed. Coughing. Matteo stepped back. Breathing, controlled. But his eyes stayed on Sophie. She understood then. He had stopped because she asked. Not because Derek deserved mercy. Because she had asked. Vanessa moved suddenly. Sophie saw the flash of metal before anyone else did. A small pistol from beneath Vanessa's coat. Gun, Sophie shouted. Matteo shoved Sophie behind him as the shot cracked through the office. Glass shattered. One of Matteo's men fired back, hitting the wall inches from Vanessa's head. She screamed and dropped the weapon. The headmaster fell to his knees. Derek bolted for the side door. Sophie did not think. She grabbed the heavy ceramic trophy from the shelf beside her and swung it into Derek's path. He tripped hard, crashing into the shredding bin. The flash drive skidded across the floor. Sophie snatched it. Derek reached for her ankle. Matteo was there before his fingers closed. He stepped between them and looked down at Derek with a calm so deadly the room seemed to stop breathing. Touch hair, Matteo said, and I end every version of your future. Derek went still. Sophie clutched the flash drive against her chest. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Matteo looked toward the sound. Rosa's voice came through his earpiece. Police dispatched. Some friendly, some not. Matteo turned to Sophie. We need to go. She looked at Derek on the floor. Vanessa crying beside the desk. The headmaster shaking under the weight of his own corruption. Then she looked at the children's paintings in the hallway. Her hallway. Her school. Her son's future. No, she said. Matteo went still. Sophie. No. If we run. Derek tells the story. She lifted the flash drive. I want the real one told first. His eyes searched hers. Danger moved closer with every siren. Still, Matteo did not argue. What do you need? He asked. Sophie looked at the headmaster. Your office has a live stream system for board meetings. Doctor. Ellison swallowed. Sophie stepped toward him. No longer shaking. Turn it on. By morning, Sophie Lane was everywhere. Not as Derek's charity case. Not as an unstable single mother. Not as the woman no powerful man would choose. She was the teacher standing in a private school records office beside Matteo DeLuca, holding a flash drive while the headmaster confessed on a live stream that donor funds had been forged. Signatures stolen. Scholarships manipulated. And a child student account used as cover for criminal transfers. The video spread before Derek's lawyers could contain it. By 7 a.m., parents were calling the school. By 8, Vanessa's family had released a statement denying knowledge. By 9, Derek Vale had vanished from police custody during a transport error that Matteo described. With such icy silence, Sophie understood the war had only begun. Noah woke at the safe house asking for pancakes. Children, Sophie thought, could survive storms adults did not know how to name. She made breakfast in Matteo's enormous kitchen while Rosa watched with approval, and 2 armed guards pretended not to soften every time Noah asked them questions about their earpieces. Matteo did not appear until mid-morning. When he entered, the room changed. Noah looked up from his pancakes. Mr. Black suit Sophie closed her eyes. Rosa coughed into her tea. Matteo looked at Noah. Then, at his own black shirt. I suppose that's accurate. Noah grinned. You carried me. I did. Are you strong? Yes. Can you carry Mommy too? Sophie nearly dropped the spatula. P. Matteo's eyes lifted to hers. For one impossible second, the dangerous world outside disappeared, leaving only the kitchen warmth, the smell of pancakes, and the question hanging between them. Matteo answered Noah without looking away from Sophie. If she ever lets me. Sophie's cheeks warmed. Noah, eat. Noah obeyed with the smug satisfaction of a child who knew he had caused adult trouble. Matteo moved to the counter beside Sophie, leaving a careful distance. You should have woken me, she said. You slept for 3 hours. That's not an answer. It was enough. She flipped a pancake with more force than necessary. What happened to Derek? He ran. You let him. Matteo's face turned cold. No. The single word told her enough. Sophie lowered her voice. Is he coming for Noah? He wants leverage? Noah is leverage. Her hand tightened around the spatula. Matteo noticed. I have men at every exit. Rosa will stay with him. The school is closed. Your apartment is being repaired. My apartment is a crime scene. It's being repaired. He repeated. She turned to him. You don't get to buy my life back together. His gaze held hers. I wasn't asking permission to fix a window. It starts with a window. What does she swallowed? Men like Derek start with favors too. Matteo became very still. I am not Derek. I know. Her voice softened despite herself. That's what scares me. Something shifted in his eyes. Noah hummed at the table, drowning pancakes in syrup. Matteo leaned slightly closer, his voice too low for anyone else. What scares you more? Sophie, that I'm dangerous or that you feel safer with me than you should? Her breath caught. The spatula rested forgotten in her hand. He did not touch her. He only waited. That restraint again. It made every inch of space between them feel charged. Sophie forced herself to look away. I need to check on Noah's schoolwork. Sophie. She turned back. Matteo's face had changed. The darkness returned. But this time it carried urgency. What? My men found something in Noah's backpack. The world narrowed. What Matteo took a small plastic object from his pocket and placed it on the counter. A dinosaur keychain. Noah's favorite. Sophie stared at it. No. It had a tracker inside. Her stomach dropped. He's had that for months. I know. Sophie gripped the counter. Derek had given Noah that keychain after a school concert, smiling like the generous, almost stepfather he had never been. Noah had loved it because it roared when squeezed. Sophie had let him keep it. Again. Derek had reached her son because she had underestimated the depth of his cruelty. I'm going to be sick, she whispered. Matteo reached for her, then stopped himself. She noticed. And because she noticed, because the restraint hurt more than touch would have. Sophie stepped forward and pressed her forehead briefly against his chest. Matteo froze. Every muscle in him locked. His heart beat beneath her cheek, slow and hard. For a moment, he did nothing. Then his hand rose and hovered near her back. Sophie, he said, voice roughened. She pulled away before he touched her. I'm sorry. His eyes were darker now. Don't apologize for needing 1 second not to stand alone. The words almost broke her. She turned back to the stove, but her vision blurred. Noah looked up. Mommy, she smiled quickly. I'm okay. Baby. Matteo looked at the boy, then at Sophie. That was the moment his protectiveness became something else. Not love. Not yet. Something more dangerous because it refused a name. For 3 days, The world outside the safe house sharpened into threat. Reporters camped outside Sophia's apartment. Derek's lawyers filed an emergency petition claiming Sophie was mentally unstable and involved with organized crime. Anonymous accounts posted photos from the fundraiser, cropping the images so it looked like Matteo had taken Noah from Sophie instead of comforting him. Every headline twisted the truth. Every phone call tightened the noose. Sophie stopped reading comments after one stranger wrote, "That poor child needs a real family." Matteo found her in the library that night, sitting on the floor between shelves of leather-bound books with Noah asleep against her lap. The boy had insisted he was not tired, then collapsed mid-sentence while explaining why whales were bigger than school buses. Sophie ran her fingers through his hair. "He asked me today if he made me harder to love," she whispered. Matteo's face changed. Slowly. He crouched in front of them. Noah slept on. "What did you tell him?" Matteo asked. "That he made love bigger." Matteo looked at the child. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he reached into his pocket and took out a small silver lighter. Sophie frowned. He held up his other hand. In it was a folded newspaper clipping. One of the headlines, "Sophie Lane's criminal romance raises custody. Questions." Matteo lit the corner. Flame curled across the paper. Sophie watched the headline blacken. "You can burn every lie," she said softly. "No," Matteo said, "but I can start with the ones that touched your son." The fire reflected in his eyes. It should have seemed theatrical. Instead, it felt like a vow. Sophia's throat tightened. "You remaking it hard to hate you. I noticed. I didn't say I liked you." "No. But you heard it anyway." His mouth curved slightly. "Yes." The air changed. Noah shifted in his sleep. Matteo's gaze dropped to Sophie's hand, resting protectively over her son's back. "You love like war," he said. She looked up. "What does that mean?" "It means you stand between him and the world, even when you're bleeding." Sophie's eyes stung. "And you?" she asked, before she could stop herself. "How do you love?" His expression closed. "I don't too." The answer came too quickly. Too practiced. Sophie tilted her head. "That sounds like something you say so no one asks who taught you not to." For the first time, she saw him truly flinch. Not outwardly. Matteo De Luca did not give people the satisfaction of visible wounds. But his eyes changed. He stood. "I have calls." "Matteo." He stopped. Sophie should have let him go. Instead, she said, "You don't have to tell me. But don't to lie to me." His back remained turned. When he spoke, his voice was low. "My father loved by owning. My mother loved by disappearing. My sister loved by saving everyone." He turned slightly. "She died for it." Sophie held Noah closer. "I'm sorry." He looked at her then, and the distance between them felt impossibly thin. "So am I." A phone rang somewhere down the hall. The moment broke. Matteo left before either of them could step closer to the truth. The betrayal came the next afternoon. Sophie found the file by accident. At least, she thought it was an accident. She had gone looking for construction paper for Noah in Matteo's office because Rosa said the supply cabinet was near the study. The door was open. Papers lay stacked on the desk. Most were in Italian. Legal documents and property maps. Then she saw her name. Sophie Lane, risk profile. Her pulse stopped. She should have walked away. Instead, she opened the folder. Photos slid across the desk. Sophie entering state. Aurelia. Sophie carrying groceries. Sophie reading to Noah at the bakery downstairs. Noah on the playground. Noah holding the dinosaur keychain. Her hand flew to her mouth. The dates went back 3 weeks. Before the fundraiser, before Matteo had held her son, before he had chosen her in front of everyone, a cold wave moved through her. She barely heard Matteo enter. Sophie. She turned. He saw the folder. His face hardened. But not with guilt. With calculation. That hurt more. You were watching us. Yes. The room blurred. Before the fundraiser. Yes. Her laugh broke. And you let me believe you just happened to be there. I was there for Derek. You had photos of my son. To confirm the forged account, you had photos of my son. She repeated. Voice rising, Matteo stepped forward. Sophie. Listen to me. No. She backed away. You don't get to use that voice. Not now. I never intended to involve Noah. But you did. You walked into that ballroom knowing who we were. I knew your name was on documents. I did not know Derek would humiliate you. But when he did, you used it. His jaw tightened. I stopped it. You made yourself the hero. Anger flashed in his eyes, then vanished beneath control. I made myself visible so Derek would come after me instead of you. And did he? She demanded. Because from where I'm standing, he came after my apartment, my job, my son's backpack, my entire life. Matteo's silence was unbearable. Sophie grabbed the folder and threw it at him. Photos scattered across the floor. Noah's face smiled up from glossy paper. Matteo looked down at the images. For the first time since she met him, he looked ashamed. I should have told you, he said. Yes. I didn't because I thought you would refuse protection. I would have. I know. And you decided my choice didn't matter? His eyes lifted. There it was. The truth neither could soften. Yes. Sophie's chest hurt. She hated that he did not lie. She hated that honesty could still wound. I need to leave, she said. Sophie, I need air before I say something I can't take back. You can say anything to me. No. Matteo. Her voice shook. Because the worst part is, I trusted you. And I don't know if that makes me brave or stupid. His expression darkened with pain he had no right to show. You are not stupid. She walked past him. He did not stop her. That almost made it worse. Outside, snow had begun to fall again. Sophie stood on the cliffside path behind the house, arms wrapped around herself. Matteo's world stretching around her in cold glass and black security gates. She had been watched. Protected. Yes, but watched. Chosen. Maybe. But also used. She thought of Derek saying no one wanted a single mom. She thought of Matteo kneeling before Noah. She thought of his heartbeat beneath her cheek and the folder of photographs on his desk. A sob rose in her throat. She swallowed it. She would not cry because powerful men kept turning her life into a battlefield. Her phone buzzed. Not the secure phone Matteo had given her. Her old phone, the one she thought had died after the apartment attack. A message appeared from an unknown number. A photo. Noah sitting at the safe house kitchen table that morning. Syrup on his chin. Then a text. You trusted the wrong monster. Another message followed. Ask DeLuca what happened to the last child he protected. Sophie's blood went cold. Behind her, branches snapped. She turned. A man stood at the edge of the path, dressed in white winter camouflage. Gun raised. Sophie screamed. The shot cracked across the cliff. Matteo slammed into her from the side, taking her down behind a stone wall as bullets struck the snow around them. His body covered hers. Sophie. Stay down. His voice was calm, but his breathing was not. Blood darkened the sleeve of his shirt. She stared. You re-hit. Not enough. His men shouted from the house. Gunfire answered from the trees. Sophie pressed her hands to his arm. Matteo. He looked at her then. Really looked, and the mask was gone. Fear. Not for himself. For her. It transformed his face into something almost unbearable. If I tell you to run, he said, you run. No. Sophie. I said, no. A bullet shattered stone above them. Matteo pulled her closer. His hand at the back of her head, shielding her from fragments. For one breath, their faces were inches apart. Snow fell onto his lashes. His blood warmed her fingers. He almost kissed her. She saw the decision rise in him like a storm. Then he turned away. Not like this, he said roughly, what his jaw clenched. Not when you re-afraid. Before she could answer, the shooting stopped. One of Matteo's men called out from the trees. Clear. Matteo rose first, pulling Sophie up behind him. She clutched his injured arm. You need a doctor. I have one. Of course you do. His eyes searched her face. The argument in the office still stood between them. The photos. The betrayal. The choice he had taken away. But his blood was on her hands. And she had almost lost him before she knew what he was becoming to her. Rosa appeared at the back doors. Faccia pale. Noah. Sophie shouted. With me? Rosa called. Safe. Sophie's knees nearly gave out. Matteo caught her. This time, she let him, only for a second. Only because the world had nearly ended. But they both felt the difference. That night, Sophie did not sleep. Matteo refused a hospital. Of course. A private doctor stitched his arm in the dining room while Noah slept upstairs under Rosa's guard, and 3 men watched every entrance. Sophie stood nearby, arms crossed, furious. Matteo looked amused, despite the blood on his shirt. You're angry that I was shot. I'm angry that you're pretending being shot is an inconvenience. It is. The doctor did not look up. And Sophie glared. Matteo's mouth almost curved. When the doctor left, Sophie remained. Silence settled. He sat at the table, shirt open at the collar, bandage wrapped around his upper arm. Without the jacket, without the perfect control, he looked more human. That made him more dangerous. I need to know, Sophie said, about the message. His expression darkened. Yes. He leaned back slightly. 8 years ago. My sister had a son. Sophie's breath caught. You had a nephew, Luca. The name left him like a wound. He was 4 when she died. I took him into my home. Thought my walls, my men, my name would be enough. Sophie did not move. They weren't. Matteo stared at the table. The Rossinis sent a message. Car bomb meant for me. His voice remained controlled. But every word had blood beneath it. Luca survived 3 days. Sophie's hand covered her mouth. I left that part of myself in the hospital room. The room was so quiet Sophie could hear the wind against the windows. That's why Noah, she whispered. Matteo looked up. When I saw him crying in that ballroom, I saw a child surrounded by adults who had already decided his pain was inconvenient. His eyes burned dark. I did not choose you to make a statement. Sophie, I chose him because no one chose Luca in time. Tears blurred her vision. The anger did not vanish, but it changed shape. You should have told me about the photos. Yes, you should have asked before putting guards around my life. Yes, you should stop deciding that protection gives you the right to control people. His mouth tightened. Yes. That last yes broke something open between them. Sophie sat across from him. I don't know how to trust you. I know. I don't know how to not trust you either. His eyes held hers. That is my fault. Sophie looked down at her hands. His blood had dried at the edge of her sleeve. Derek sent that shooter, no. Matteo said. Rossini did. The rival family. Yes. And Derek gave them access. Her stomach twisted. What happens now? Matteo's face hardened. Now I end the part of this that can touch you. The words chilled her. Matteo. He crossed a line. You have many lines. No. His voice was quiet. I had many lines. Then he put a tracker in Noah's toy. Sophie closed her eyes. She could feel the violence in him. Patient and certain. A month ago, that would have sent her running. Tonight, it scared her differently, because part of her wanted Derek afraid. Part of her wanted the world to feel what it had made her son feel. That part terrified her. I don't want Noah raised in revenge, she said. Matteo's eyes softened slightly. Then he won't be. And I don't want to become someone who waits at home while men decide which laws matter. You want? How do you know? Because you walked into a school office during a criminal extraction and made a headmaster confess on livestream. Despite everything. Sophie almost smiled. Matteo saw it. The room warmed by one impossible degree. Then his phone rang. He answered, listened, and went still. Sophie stood. What Matteo's gaze lifted to hers. Derek filed the emergency custody order. He content. He isn't Noah's father. He forged enough to create a hearing. When Matteo's silence answered, Sophie's heart dropped. Tomorrow, the courthouse looked like a fortress in the morning. Reporters crowded the steps. Cameras flashed against the gray winter sky. Protesters held signs about corruption at elite schools. Parents whispered behind gloved hands. Derek's lawyers had done their work well. The story had shifted overnight from stolen funds to whether Sophie Lane was fit to raise her son while living under the protection of a mafia boss. Sophie wore a navy dress Rosa had pressed for her. Simple. Elegant. Hers. Because she had refused every designer option Matteo offered. Noah stayed at the safe house with Rosa. Leaving him there felt like tearing out a piece of her own body. Matteo walked beside Sophie up the courthouse steps. Black coat moving in the wind. His men forming a quiet wall around them. Reporters shouted, Sophie, are you romantically involved with Matteo De Luca? Did you accept mafia money? Is your son safe? At that one, Sophie stopped. Matteo stopped with her. She turned to the cameras. My son is not a headline, she said. He is a child. And every adult who forgot that should be ashamed. For once. The reporters quieted. Matteo looked at her with something close to pride. Inside the courtroom, Derek sat at the petitioner's table wearing a charcoal suit and the expression of a wounded gentleman. Sophie hated him so much her hands went cold. He turned as she entered. His eyes moved from her to Matteo. Then he smiled. The hearing began with Derek's lawyer painting Sophie as unstable, vulnerable, compromised, a struggling single mother seduced by criminal power, a woman whose apartment had been attacked because of the company she kept, a mother who had brought danger into her child's life. Sophie listened with her spine straight. Matteo listened without expression. Only once did his hand move. When Derek's lawyer said Noah needed a proper male influence, Matteo's fingers curled against the bench. Sophie placed her hand over his. The movement was small. No one else noticed. But Matteo did. His fingers went still beneath hers. Then came Derek's testimony. He spoke beautifully. He always had. And he described concern, history, his desire to protect Noah from chaos. He implied Sophie had always been emotional, always proud, always unwilling to accept help. Then Sophie's lawyer asked one question. Mr. Val, are you Noah Lane's biological father? Derek smiled sadly. No, but fatherhood is more than blood. Sophie's stomach turned. The lawyer nodded. Then why did you submit this private document to the court stating that you had paternal guardianship rights? A document appeared on the screen. Derek's smile froze. His lawyer stood. Objection. The judge leaned forward. Sit down. The room shifted. Sophie looked at Matteo. He did not look surprised. Of course he did not. Derek's voice tightened. That was prepared by school administration for emergency purposes. With Sophie Lane's forged signature, I didn't know it was forged. The courtroom doors opened. Dr. Ellison entered, flanked by federal agents. Derek went pale. Sophie's breath caught. Matteo leaned toward her. I told you I had one honest federal agent left. Dr. Ellison testified for 27 minutes. By the end, Derek's mask had cracked. By the time Vanessa's recorded statement played, it shattered. She had turned on him before sunrise, trading information for protection. Her voice filled the courtroom, sharp and bitter, explaining how Derek used Sophie's name because no one would believe a charity mother over him. Sophie sat very still. Derek looked back at her. For the first time, he was afraid, not of the law, of losing control of the story. The judge denied the custody petition with visible disgust. Federal agents moved toward Derek. But Derek had planned one more escape. The lights went out. The courtroom erupted. Screams, shouts, benches scraping. Matteo grabbed Sophie and pulled her down as a smoke canister rolled under the petitioner's table. Not again. Sophie gasped. Derek ran. Matteo moved to follow. Sophie caught his hand. For 1 second, they looked at each other in the chaos. She knew what he wanted to do. She also knew what it might cost him. Noah needs you free, she said. The words stunned them both. Because she had not said, I need you, but they heard it anyway. Matteo looked toward the door where Derek had vanished. Then he looked back at Sophie and stayed. His men pursued Derek instead. Matteo wrapped his coat around Sophia's shoulders and led her out through a side corridor, shielding her from smoke, cameras, and panic. Outside, snow fell harder. Black SUVs surged to the curb. Then Matteo's phone rang. He answered. His face changed. Sophie felt the shift before he spoke. Rosa's voice came through the phone, broken by static. Matteo. They breached the outer gate. Sophie's blood stopped. Noah, she whispered. Matteo was already moving. The drive back to the safe house was the longest 20 minutes of Sophie's life. Matteo did not speak. His men did not speak. The SUV tore through snow-covered roads while Sophie clutched the door handle and prayed in fragments. Please let him be safe. Please let him be hiding. Please let Rosa have him. Please. Matteo sat beside her. Phone pressed to his ear, giving orders in a voice so cold it barely sounded human, but his other hand rested on the seat between them. Palm open. Sophie looked at it, then took it. His fingers closed around hers instantly. No hesitation. No restraint. No pretense. The safe house gates hung open when they arrived. One guard was down near the entrance, alive but injured. Another waved them through. The front doors stood open, wind throwing snow across the marble floor. Sophie ran. Matteo caught up before she reached the stairs. Noah, she screamed. No answer. Rosa appeared at the top, landing with blood on her temple. Sophie nearly collapsed. He's alive, Rosa said quickly. They took him through the service tunnel. He fought them. Sophie sobbed once. Matteo's face became something terrible. Derek Rosa nodded. And Rossini men. Sophie looked at Matteo, where he did not answer. Matteo. Where would he take my son? His jaw tightened. The old chapel. What chapel? My sister's chapel. he said, where her foundation began. The meaning struck her. Derek was not just running. He was staging a message. Matteo turned to his men, issuing commands, weapons appearing, engines roaring outside. Sophie grabbed his arm. I'm coming. No. If you say that one more time, he has Noah because of me. He has Noah because of Derek. And Derek is alive because I let courts try first. Sophie stared at him. No. Don't do that. Don't turn my son into permission to become the worst version of yourself. Matteo's eyes burned. I will do whatever brings him back. So will I. The house seemed to hold its breath. Sophie stepped closer. I know Noah. I know how he hides when he's scared. I know what he does with his hands when he's trying not to cry. I know the song I taught him for emergencies. If he hears me, he'll answer. You need me. Matteo looked like the words physically hurt him, because she was right. Finally, he nodded once. Behind me. Always. Sophie took the gun one of his men offered, then immediately looked horrified. Matteo gently took it from her and replaced it with a small flashlight. No, he said. You stay alive. That is your weapon. Under any other circumstances, she might have argued. Tonight, she nodded. The chapel stood abandoned on a hill above the frozen harbor, its stone walls blackened by age and storm. Once, it had belonged to a convent. Later, to Matteo's sister's foundation. Now, its stained glass windows were cracked, and snow blew through broken arches like ash. Black SUVs approached with headlights off. Sophie's heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. Matteo sat beside her in the darkness, his face lit only by the faint glow of dashboard instruments. If something happens to me, he said, Rosa as documents, money, protection for you and Noah. Sophie turned sharply. Don't. Sophie. No. In. You don't get to prepare me to lose you when I haven't even decided what you are to me. The words escaped before pride could stop them. Matteo went still. His eyes found hers in the dark. What am I to you outside? Men moved silently through snow. Danger waited in the chapel. Her son was somewhere inside. And still, in that impossible moment, Sophie's heart answered before her mind could. A problem, she whispered. Matteo's mouth curved faintly. Then she added, one I need alive. The almost smile disappeared. His gaze dropped to her lips. This time, he did touch her. Only 2 fingers beneath her chin. Barely there. Enough to tilt her face toward his. I'll bring him back, he said. We will. His eyes held hers. Then he nodded. They entered through the rear crypt. The chapel smelled of damp stone, candle wax, and old smoke. Matteo's men spread out. Sophie stayed close behind him, every nerve screaming. Somewhere ahead, Derek's voice echoed. I know you here. DeLuca. Matteo stopped behind a cracked pillar. Sophie peered around him. At the front of the chapel, beneath a broken statue of an angel, Derek stood with Noah in front of him. Noah's hands were tied, but he was standing, alive. Sophie's knees nearly gave out. Noah, she breathed. Matteo's hand caught her waist, steadying her. Derek held a gun near Noah's shoulder, not touching him, but close enough. Sophie's vision went red. Rossini men stood along the aisle, weapons raised. At the altar, an older man in a dark overcoat watched with bored elegance. Carlo Rossini. Even Sophie knew that name from whispers now. Matteo stepped out first. Every gun turned toward him. Sophie wanted to scream. He walked down the center aisle like a groom entering a wedding made of ruin. Let the boy go, Matteo said. Derek laughed. You always did have flair. Matteo ignored him and looked at Noah. The boy was crying silently, trying to be brave. Matteo's voice changed. Noah. Noah looked at him. Remember what I told you, Noah sniffed. Strong name. That's right. Sophie pressed a hand over her mouth. Derek sneered. Touching. Really? The mob boss playing daddy. Matteo's eyes moved to him. You're going to regret using that word. Carlo Rossini sighed. Enough theater. The drive. DeLuca. The accounts. Your sister C. Remaining foundation transfers. Give them to me. And the child walks. Matteo reached into his coat and removed a small black drive. Sophie's heart stopped. He had brought it. Of course he had. Derek's eyes gleamed. Matteo held it up. First. The boy. Carlo smiled. You are not in a position to negotiate. No. Matteo said. I'm in a position to decide who dies first. The chapel went colder. Sophie saw Rossini's men shift. Then she heard it. Tiny. Almost swallowed by the wind. A hum. Noah was humming. The emergency song. The one Sophie had taught him when he was 4. After he got separated from her in a grocery store. If you re-scared and can't shout, hum this. I'll find you. Sophie's tears spilled over. Noah's fingers moved behind his back. Not tied well. He was loosening the knot. Smart boy. Brave boy. Her boy. Sophie looked at Matteo. He had heard it too. His eyes flicked once toward Noah's hands. Then back to Carlo. I'll give you the drive, Matteo said. He stepped closer. Derek tightened his grip on Noah's shoulder. Not another step. Matteo stopped. Sophie moved in the shadows along the side aisle, keeping low behind broken pews. Her breath shook. Her knees threatened to fail. But Noah kept humming. Matteo raised the drive. Carlo nodded to one of his men. The man walked forward. At that exact moment, Noah dropped hard to the floor. Sophie lunged from behind the pew. Noah gunfire exploded. Matteo moved like a shadow unleashed. He struck the man nearest him, drove him into the altar rail, and fired once toward the ceiling, shattering the last intact chandelier. Darkness and glass rained down. Sophie grabbed Noah and pulled him behind a stone column. He sobbed into her chest. He hummed. He cried. Mommy. I hummed. I heard you. Baby. I heard you. Matteo fought through the chaos toward them. Derek crawled for his gun. Sophie saw him first. Rage burned away fear. She grabbed a fallen candlestick and struck his wrist before he could aim. Derek screamed. Matteo reached them. Gun raised. His body between Sophie and every threat. Carlo Rossini stood near the altar with a pistol aimed at Matteo's back. Matteo, Sophie shouted. Matteo turned. Too late. A shot rang out. But it was not Carlo Slash. Rosa stood at the chapel entrance. Silver hair wild from the wind, a gun steady in both hands. Carlo dropped his weapon and fell to his knees. Wounded but alive. Matteo stared at Rosa. She lifted her chin. You were taking too long. Noah clung to Sophie. Matteo looked down at Derek, who was curled on the floor clutching his wrist. For one terrible second, Sophie thought he would end him there. In the chapel, in front of the broken angel, in front of Noah, Matteo's face was empty. Derek looked up, terrified. You want to, Derek said, not with her watching. Matteo's eyes shifted to Sophie. She held Noah, trembling. Their gazes locked. Sophie did not plead. She did not command. She simply looked at him with all the trust she had left. Matteo lowered the gun. Derek laughed weakly, relieved. Then Matteo crouched in front of him. No, he said softly. You don't get a quick ending. Federal lights flashed through the shattered windows. Sirens rose. Derek's relief died. Matteo stood and walked to Sophie and Noah. Noah reached for him. Sophie froze. So did Matteo. Then, slowly, Matteo knelt. Noah threw his arms around his neck. Matteo closed his eyes. For the first time, Sophie saw him break. Not loudly, not completely, but enough. His hand came up to cradle the back of Noah's head with aching care. I was strong, Noah whispered. Matteo's voice was rough. Yes, you were. Sophie knelt beside them, tears freezing on her cheeks. Matteo looked at her over Noah's shoulder. All the danger. Control. Secrets. Violence. Guilt. And longing stripped away. Only the truth remained. I'm sorry, he said. Sophie knew he meant more than the photos, more than the lies, more than every choice he had made for her in the name of protection. She touched his injured arm gently. I know. It was not forgiveness yet, but it was the door opening. Behind them, police stormed the chapel. Rossini men were disarmed. Derek was dragged to his feet. Screaming about lawyers and reputation and how Sophie would regret this, Noah lifted his head from Matteo's shoulder. Mommy. Yes. Baby can, mister. Black suit, come home. Sophie looked at Matteo. A dangerous man kneeling in broken glass. A mafia boss with blood on his sleeve and a child's arms around his neck. A man who had lied to protect her. Hurt her by deciding for her. Then stopped himself from becoming a monster because she trusted him not to. Sophie breathed in. We'll see, she said. Matteo's mouth curved slightly. For him, it was almost a smile. For Sophie, it felt like sunrise touching ruins. 3 months later, Stain. Aurelia Academy reopened under a new name. The Veil Wing was stripped of its plaque. The donor board was rebuilt. The Scholarship Foundation was placed under federal oversight and renamed for Matteo's sister. At Sophie's request, no DeLuca name appeared anywhere. Matteo had accepted that with only one long, unhappy stare. You can glare, she told him. It still won't make me name a children's art studio after a mafia boss. I was thinking of naming the security office after myself. Absolutely not. Noah had laughed so hard he spilled orange juice. Life did not become simple. It became honest. Sophie returned to teaching. Though now 2 discreet security men stood near the school entrance, pretending to be maintenance staff. Reporters still tried sometimes, but less often after one photographer's car was mysteriously towed from 3 legal parking spots in the same week. Derek Vale awaited trial. Vanessa entered witness protection. Carlo Rossini survived, which Matteo described as unfortunate but useful. Sophie learned not to ask certain questions before coffee. She also learned Matteo could be patient in ways that made her nervous. He did not move into her apartment. He did not demand more than she offered. He did not touch her unless she came close first, which somehow made the air between them burn hotter. He attended Noah's school events from the back row, always in black, always frightening at least 3 parents without trying. Noah adored him. That terrified Sophie most of all. One spring afternoon, the school held a small art exhibition in the courtyard. Sunlight spilled over the tables. Children's paintings fluttered on display boards. Parents drank lemonade and pretended not to stare at Matteo DeLuca, standing beside the finger painting station like an elegantly dressed threat. Sophie watched from across the courtyard as Noah tugged Matteo toward his artwork. The painting showed 3 people. A woman in a blue dress. A little boy with brown hair. A tall man in black. This time, the man had a red heart on his chest. Sophie's throat tightened. Matteo looked at the painting for a long time. Then he crouched beside Noah. "What is this?" he asked. "Our family," Noah said simply. The courtyard noise faded for Sophie. Matteo went very still. Noah pointed at the red heart. "I gave you one because Mommy says everyone has one even if they hide it." Matteo looked across the courtyard at Sophie. She could not move. He stood slowly. There were moments in life when a woman knew the ground beneath her had changed. Not because a man chose her publicly, not because he carried her son, not because he protected her from bullets or scandal or cruel men, but because somewhere along the way, the dangerous man had become a place her heart recognized. Matteo walked toward her. Parents moved out of his way without understanding why. Sophie met him beneath a blooming dogwood tree at the edge of the courtyard. "You told him, I have a heart," Matteo said. "I said everyone does." That was generous. That was teacher language for don't give up on difficult cases. His eyes warmed. Just slightly. Enough. He reached into his coat. Sophie stiffened. Matteo noticed and almost smiled. No weapons. Good. He removed a small velvet box. Her breath stopped. "Matteo, it isn't what you think." She looked at him. He opened it. Inside was not a ring, it was a key. Plain. Silver. Ordinary. The kind used for homes. Not mansions. "I bought the bakery building," he said. Sophie stared. "You? What? The one below your apartment?" "The landlord was going to sell it to developers." Her eyes widened. "You bought my building, yes." "Matteo, I know," he said. "It sounds controlling. It sounds insane." "That too." She tried not to smile. Failed. He held out the key. "The top floor is yours if you want it. Larger. Safair. Still your neighborhood. Still your locks. Your name on every document. Not mine. Not a gift you owe me for. A choice." Sophie stared at the key. A choice. He had learned the shape of the word slowly. Painfully. Imperfectly. But he had learned. "What if I say no?" she asked. "Then I keep overpaying the bakery rent and pretend I bought the building for cannoli." A laugh broke out of her before she could stop it. Matteo's expression softened in a way only she knew how to see. Then his voice lowered. "I am not asking to own your life, Sophie." The courtyard blurred around them. "I am asking where you want me to stand in it." Her heart ached. All at once, she saw every version of him. The man kneeling before her crying son. The man standing in her smoky apartment with a gun in his hand. The man burning a headline because it hurt Noah. The man lowering his weapon in a ruined chapel because she believed he could. The man learning that love was not possession. Sophie stepped closer. "Beside me," she said. Matteo's eyes darkened with emotion. "Careful." "No." She touched his face. And this time, he was the one who stopped breathing. "I'm done being careful with everything except my son." His hand rose to cover hers. Warm. Steady. Reverent. Across the courtyard, Noah shouted, "Can Mr. Black Suit come to dinner?" Parents turned. Sophie laughed through sudden tears. Matteo looked toward Noah, then back at her. "Can he?" Sophie pretended to think. "He can." Matteo leaned closer, his mouth near her ear. "And after dinner," her pulse jumped. "After dinner," she whispered. "He can ask again." His eyes held hers. Dangerous. Devoted. Patient. But barely. Then he smiled. Not the cold smile that made enemies step back. Not the faint curve he used to hide pain. A real smile. Small. Raw. And devastating. Noah ran over and grabbed Matteo's hand with one of his and Sophie's hand with the other. "Come look at my painting again," he demanded. Sophie looked down at their joined hands. For years, she had thought love meant being chosen despite her child, despite her past, despite the life she carried. Now she understood. The right kind of love did not step around what made her whole. It knelt before it. It carried it gently. It protected without shame. It stayed. As Noah pulled them across the sunlit courtyard, Matteo's fingers brushed Sophie's, almost hidden, almost careful. Then he linked them fully, in front of everyone. No grand speech, no chandelier silence, no cruel ex laughing from across the room. Just a mother, her son, and the dangerous man who had once been feared by an entire city learning how to be chosen back. And when Sophie looked at him, she saw the promise in his eyes before he spoke it. No one would ever make them feel unwanted again. Not while Matteo De Luca was breathing. Not while he had a heart to hide. Not while Sophie Lane had finally decided he was allowed to stand beside hers.